Okay, I'm good.
Mass?
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the July 23rd, 2024 City Commission Workshop. And I'm your Mayor, Chris Villa. I call this meeting to order. Val, please call the roll.
Commissioner Penny?
Here.
Commissioner Curry? Commissioner Daniel?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Mayor Villa?
Here. And so at this time, I will go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Forte if you want to kick off our budget workshop.
Yeah, well, this evening, we're going to go ahead and talk about the general fund budget and the CRA budget. We already went over all of the utilities, the enterprise funds at the last work session, so we've got in front of you a PowerPoint. There might be a couple of modifications to what you have in front of you versus what Michelle is going to be working off of, and we'll call out any changes that there might be. And then, of course, stop us if you have any questions as we're moving along. And then you also had a chance to, we gave you the detailed budget, so if you have any questions about that, we'll have a chance to address any questions that anybody may have about the detailed summary as well. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to Michelle, and we'll get started.
Thank you. Mrs. Moore, it's your floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, beginning with the tax millage summary. This year, based on the property appraiser report dated July 1st, we will see an increase of 8.66% in our taxable property values over last year. And the two charts, the one on the left shows an increase in taxable property since 2013 to now, and the millage rates, the chart on the right, from 2013 to now, as you see, the 5.9% is what the budget is, the rate it is proposed on this, in this budget.
Mayor, did you want to point out the milestone that we crossed?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that for the first time in the city's history, we have now reached over $1 billion in taxable value, which is very interesting because we're not a growing city boundary-wise, but all the infill has been happening and redevelopment, and then of course, as we've seen with real estate values going up in the last several years. I just thought it was interesting to note, not that I don't think it's an accomplishment by any means, but it's definitely a milestone, and it's interesting that we're exactly right on the button there, $1 billion. So just wanted to point that out.
And I want to point out that I helped us get there.
Okay, moving on to the governmental activities net position, and these numbers come from the audited financial statements. So in the far bottom right, you'll see the audited financial statement net position of $34 million, and that does include $20 million in capital assets, about $332,000 in debt service. There is over $6 million in CRA money, and then there is an unrestricted amount of $7.1 million. And in that, we need to consider the amount of operating costs for the reserve policy, which states we should have 20%, which would be $2.3 million. The FGFOA does recommend 3 months, and that would be $2.9 million. Because with this upcoming budget, it's estimated the operating costs will be in the general fund, in the governmental funds, $968,000 a month. So this is just a chart of the increases since 2016, and the green line shows you the increase or decrease from the prior year as a percentage. And the next slide is the general fund revenue and expenditures from 2021 to proposed 2025. 21, 22, and 23 are actual. Current year is the original budget for 2024, and then you can see the 2025 general fund budget is $12,228,000. And then for further detail, the next page shows you the breakdown of the revenue. This year, the grant revenue is, it's shown as decreased because I'm waiting to hear back from two of our grants that are the police department, the aggressive driving, and the VOCA grant. So I did not put that in there yet. And then the prior year carry forward is for some projects that we'll see in a few slides. And then moving on to the next slide is a pie chart depicting similar information as far as the breakdown of the general fund revenue and the sources. And as you can see, the ad valorem taxes equate to 33% of the general fund budget. And then moving on to the general fund expenditures by activity. And again, this equals the $12,228,000. You can see the police department is $3.5 million and the fire department $1.9 million. And then the non-departmental will be some of the projects that we're going to see and some debt service payments. And so then the next slide is similar information, but in a pie chart. And as you can see, the fire and police department total 45% of the budget.
Okay, so police and fire, which is not unusual, the cost to operate police and fire exceeds the amount of ad valorem taxes that the city brings in. So we bring in 33% of the budget, and yet we spend 45% of the budget for public safety.
And Joe, I'm assuming there's placeholders in here for assumed percentages of raises?
Yeah, yes, and we'll talk about that at the shade meeting
Okay.
tonight. But yeah, there are placeholders in there for that.
Okay.
But Joe, that's the same as every year, right? A third?
Thereabouts.
Ad valorem's about a third, and then,
Yeah, it's not, that's what I said, it's typical, it's not unusual that public safety alone exceeds most, not just ours, most cities' ad valorem revenues.
and ad valorem is always about a third, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Third of-
Pretty close.
Yeah, the revenue.
Right? Yeah.
And then the next slide is expenditure by activity, comparing it to the original budget of 2024 to the proposed of 2025, and the increase in dollars and the percentage of change. And this budget does include 3 police vehicles, a Ford F-150 for the fire department, and a Ford F-150 for the streets department. And that's included in the non-departmental, $865,000, along with transfers. And then moving on to the fuel tax fund. This is the fund where we budget for the annual paving, which is $285,000 proposed, and the sidewalk replacement, $50,000. And the mobility fee is, the $200,000 is actually a transfer from our solid waste fund, which is what we do every year. And then the permitting is on the next slide. Slight increase from last year, mostly wages, up to $409,000. And that transfer of $150,000 comes from the general fund. And then the next slide is the CRA fund. And this year's budget is $3.3 million. And as part of this budget, under non-departmental, we have debt payments of almost $850,000, but we do have funding available of $1.2 million for additional projects.
So Michelle's looking at me. So we're probably going to need a work session to talk about, we're moving forward with the CRA request to extend the time frame with the county, but there's still monies that are in the CRA fund generated coming in and in the fund balance that we need to start to consider what projects we want to spend those on. Regardless of what happens with the extension request, we should still look to try to get projects funded under that CRA.
Yeah.
And then on page 13 is the capital projects budget. And as you can see on page 14, this is the breakdown of the proposed projects for the upcoming year. And this does include the 7th Street Park Playground, which we intend on using CDBG funds for.
Meaning, is that going to be it, 102,000, or that's what we're putting in, and then the grant will go above that?
No,
That
that's-
is the grant amount.
That's the grant, so we have a revenue of that amount and a matching expense of that amount.
Did we already get that, Steve? No? We're just putting in for it.
It's been allocated, and that is the total amount that we're going to be spending as well. So the grant's 102,966. We anticipate spending that out like for 7th Street. We have one there. We're going to have.
Well, come up to the mic if you're going to elaborate, sorry.
Yes, in answer to the question, the 7th Street Park Playground is for the 25 CDBG project. We have 102,966 is what the city's going to be awarded. We put in that project. We haven't gotten a notice to proceed. Probably won't get that till October or November. But our total budget is 102,966. So we're not taking any additional monies. We're going to take the grant money and put a supplemental playground in next to the existing.
Awesome. Thank you. What is Sunrise Park North Dog Park doors and frames? What are doors and frames?
If you remember last year, we met with, I forgot his name, Partington, and we looked at these very strong magnets to put on doors as opposed to the locking systems that we have now. So, these folks are out there, they're breaking the locking mechanism, they're just destroying some of these things, and it costs us thousands of dollars each time they do it. So while this is a more of expensive solution, we think it's a solution that will resolve the problem, that have these electromagnetic systems on there that'll prevent people from getting in.
Actually, for this part of the project, though, a lot of the doors are in very, very bad disrepair, so before we would put the
It's all going to get replaced.
Right, so we're replacing doors in their frames down at Sunrise Park and the dog park.
And then including the locking mechanisms too?
No, that's going to be an addition.
So
Oh,
did
that's
you
not
end
gonna
up
put-
putting the locking mechanism at the 10th Street Park as well as Centennial?
It's currently at Centennial, and we have a purchase order approved for Sunrise Park now.
And how has it been going at 10th Street?
At 10th Street, it's been going well. We wanted to give it a couple of months to see, what's happening, but we've had some damage to the handles there pretty often. The handles on the doors are pretty small, so people are trying to open it. They're not getting in, but they're breaking the handles off. So we're finding some stronger handles to put on there. They're a little bit smaller and a little bit harder to rip off, but people aren't getting in.
So Steve, just for my clarification, when we replace these doors, we already have the money budgeted for the magnets?
We do not. We're doing Sunrise Park this year, which means what we're going to be left with is Riverside Park, Ross Point, and the dog park, so a total of 6 bathrooms. We typically budget money in our repair and maintenance for electronic locks, so we'd be just taking it out of repair
So
and
come out of
maintenance.
repair
but-
maintenance center,
right.
okay, all right.
Great. And then you may have to get up a couple other times. I'm seeing what you may know about. City Hall Electric Lawn Center, is that just around where the memorial is for any events?
Actually, it's the center where we have a couple hundred amps of service coming in, where the bushes are. Both sides of that is kind of falling over at this point. It's in terrible disrepair. And the actual electric that's going in there is not in good repair anymore either. What we put in the ground is okay.
And Mr. Forte, you and I were over at the YMCA over just a few days ago at the pool, and a lot of the doors there were rusted out by the pool. are we able to put that into this budget and replace some of those
We
doors
have-
while we're at it?
We have I'm working on renewing the contract with the YMCA, and I want to increase there's a dollar value of maintenance that they have to cross in order for the city to pay for it. So I want to increase that, so they have to do a little bit more before the city does, because the cost of material and labor has gone up.
Right.
So in the new contract, I'm going to ask them to fix certain things, and the doors will be one of them. The entrance signs also need to be repaired. So there's certain things that I think that they should fix anyway. I don't think the city should be doing that. I think that's just part of their general maintenance, and they haven't been doing it.
Okay. And then, so we have, how many air conditioner replacements this year? Because I know that is that here at this building, or is?
Air conditioning replacements, all except for the YMCA. The one that's just air conditioner replacements is for the entire city, aside from the Y. And what we do with that is we typically wait until around this time of year, because I want to have money sitting there for emergencies. An air conditioner die, we have to replace it. At this time of year, if we gotten this far, then we start hitting that budget. So we just put in a requisition to replace a couple at the police department that are in very, very bad shape. So we're kind of getting in front of those.
And we still have the list that we had evaluated that grades them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, because last year we did this as well.
Yeah, that list
So-
really hasn't changed because it is what it is, so we know several years what we need to start replacing, and then the ones that we replace, well, they're at the top of the, I should say, maybe at the bottom of the list, and we start replacing the ones off the top of the list.
Right.
But what Steve's referring to is, we kind of sit on this money throughout the year because we get unexpected units that break down and they need to be replaced. And then toward the end of the year, towards this time of the year, we'll start to go ahead and hit the list, and whatever money's left, we'll replace what's supposed to be replaced.
Okay, and then the last one was the Public Works western fence.
Yes, sir. On the western border of the Public Works yard, there's a wooden fence that each time that we have a hurricane, sections of it come down, and right now it's back up, but we have posts kind of at an angle holding it in place. And with the amount of times that we repair it, we decided it would probably be our best option to put in a cyclone with a privacy screen.
Put in what?
A privacy screen on top of it, like we have on 10th Street,
Chain
that
link?
black screen, so that the neighbors wouldn't be seeing in and we wouldn't be looking at them.
So it'd be chain link with a screen on it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I think that's it from you, Steve. Thank you. Appreciate it. Are there any further questions about any capital projects? The only question is, Joe, is do we want to go ahead now and budget in for those locks while we're at it, while we're replacing the doors?
Well, that's what Steve's saying, is the locks, those will come out of the operating budget. So within the operating budget of the Public Works Department, they're anticipating buying those magnets, correct, Steve? Yeah, so
Are they expensive?
a couple thousand,
Why, and I understand normal maintenance items, but why wouldn't we just include that in the doors now? I mean, it seems like an actual piece of technology that would last a long time. We're not replacing hopefully every year.
no, we better not be.
Yeah. Just come back to the, I just don't want to budget it this year and then it becomes a whole next year for, how much are these items, these?
Well, it's a little
5,000?
bit more, it's not just the locks, you have to put in a system so that there is a timer on the inside. You have to wire it, in different park restrooms are more amenable to that. You have to have the existing electric, and you have to also put in some automatic exits so that if somebody's inside at 10 o'clock, they can push a button and get out. So you can't really do it by lock. If you try to do it by lock, a two restroom park building will be a lot more per lock than Sunrise. In this case, we are getting Sunrise Park done this year. So that's 8 restrooms right there, so we wouldn't want to include that. When we switch out the doors in next year's budget, the portion, it's just one small portion of the lock that we're going to take off and put back on.
Okay, It's just my suggestion that maybe we move that from the operating into capital projects, Joe, with this project, to pay for this one-time expense out of our reserves as opposed to,
You've got to see what the total cost is and see if it meets capital expense requirement.
If we put it in
You'll put it into the project.
with the doors and frames, then it will.
Yeah. But what'll end up happening is we'll reduce the operating budget a little bit and move it into the capital budget. So it
right,
can be
but
kind of-
this is a one-time expense, though, it should be, I mean,
Right.
for several years until it's fixed. So it's more of a project as opposed to ongoing every year. We need to budget for $10,000 for replacement of magnets. That's just my suggestion.
I do think actually it's going to be more of an ongoing expense. Right now, we're doing very well, but, some of the people that really want into the restrooms are very crafty.
So every year, we're going to have to replace the magnets?
Not all of them, but there'll be some. Because, again, you're talking about parts that are at the door frame. They're not inaccessible.
Yeah.
So.
Okay,
So basically, we're going to slow them down, but we're not going to eliminate.
Yeah, you're never going to
Problem.
eliminate it.
Right.
all right, thank you, Steve. And you can continue. Michelle?
Actually, I'm at the end here. So looking ahead, July 23rd, we will, tonight in the meeting, adopt the maximum millage rate. Public hearing September 9th and September 24th.
Awesome, thank you. And so now, while I got you up there, I have a couple easy questions for you, and I apologize, I called you today, but I wasn't able to get a hold of you. So, how much this year is a mill? Is it 950,000 roughly, or is it right on the dot of $1 million? Meaning, how much does a mill equal? I know it's right around $1 million.
Well, it's total, but it's probably like almost 700,000.
For
If-
general, if you take out CRA.
Right, so a tenth of a mill we determined was 68,000.
Okay,
So one full mill just on the general fund side would be about 700,000.
so
Right,
say that
because
one
a
more.
tenth is 68,000 to the general fund,
Should be 6, 8.
Tenth is 68,000.
1,000 to the general fund, backing out the CRA portion.
That's a tenth, okay. So about 680 for a full mill. Okay, to the general. Okay, and then rollback this year is 5.4151. I believe that's correct,
Yes.
right? Okay, so, and now I'm going to discuss with the commission. What I would ask this commission is, and I know tonight we're only setting the maximum millage. You know me, I would like us to consider the rollback, but when I started looking at what we can do with our millage, we're about $485,000 difference if we were $485,000 more revenue than last year, meaning that's the difference of rollback to the proposed rate at 5.9. So one thing that I've discussed with Mr. Forte and Mr. Cox is I think that we're all on the same page of bringing in more businesses into our city in the unincorporated areas. And those businesses, as Mr. Cox has found out and gone to them, they have several issues of maybe why they don't want to come into the city. And I don't know at what time we're going to actually talk about some of those other items, because there's fees that maybe this city could take on to bring in more businesses that are on the outskirts of our city. But one thing that we can address now is the difference in the county's tax rate when they're in unincorporated and ours, and it's very close. And so due to when I was looking into it, it looks like the county's ad valorem combined is 5.5368. Ours is 5.9. So we're pretty close, and I think if we could close that gap even more, the difference is 0.3632 of a mil. And if we can close that gap, takes away one of those reasons why somebody wouldn't want to annex into our city. So we can grow our tax base that way. And so with this budget, and we can address the other items as well that these businesses are looking into of why they won't come in, such as certain fees that they have to do to be able to come in to the city. But if we can address this in this budget, and maybe not tonight, but we could ask staff to come back and get us closer to where the county is. I think that staff could do that, and that's where my direction is headed tonight. And so I didn't know if you guys wanted to discuss it now more openly in this workshop, or if we want to discuss it in the city commission meeting. But that's where I'm thinking. And if we could cut it in half would be going down to 5.65. But if we got to 5.7 instead of 5.9, if we lowered that rate, that's a decrease of about 200,000 total, but that's including the CRA. So I see here a tenth to the general fund is about $130,000. So I think that we could get there, and I think that it could make a big difference in the long term. So I just wanted to throw that out there to the commission, and if there's any questions or ideas on
I
that.
thought a tenth was 68,000.
68,000, yeah.
Was 130?
To the general fund. So I'm saying if we could lower it
Oh,
two
you're saying
tenths.
2 tenths, okay.
Right,
It'd
so
be 140, almost 130.
roughly, yeah.
Do we
Yes, sir.
have any businesses that is anywhere except just on the west side of the city right now?
Yes, so how many, Mr. Cox, how many businesses have you identified do you know off the top of your head? Okay.
So is there
And-
that many we could annex into the city, property?
You want to come forward, Mr. Cox?
So if the delta that you're trying to make up is $485,000,
No, that's just the difference between rollback and what's proposed for the rate. So that would be $485,000 that we'll take in this year more than we took in last year from ad valorem taxes.
so
But that has nothing, what I'm trying to get to is close the gap of where the county's at and where we're at. So that's a difference of 0.36 of a mil. I have to do the math on that to see.
So once we
How
get
much?
past the west edge of Nova Road, it's all residential.
Yeah, there
Right.
there are still a small number of commercial properties along Nova Road
Nova Road.
that we could potentially annex in.
But
which-
there's nothing north and nothing south and nothing east, right?
A couple.
And US 1.
There's
A couple
here.
on US 1, which, very few, which are adamantly opposed for multiple reasons. And then you have some residential properties over by the Riviera ALF that are in the unincorporated
I
area.
didn't
You
know
only
that.
have Marzilli's Auto and the coin collector on Ridgewood.
So they're not in the city.
There's nothing south. So really, all the opportunity is along Nova Road for, kind of,
But just on Nova Road, as soon as you get behind the business,
it's
it's all
residential properties. Yeah,
Then residential, yeah.
yeah.
Can I ask
Yeah.
Jeff something? Is that a determining factor that you've been faced with? Is the difference in the millage that you know of?
no. I would say that they would be non-specific objections. As an example, my business has always been in the county. I don't see any reason why I should move it to the city. Mr. Walker and I have met on 3 occasions to talk about the value proposition and how we would approach individual businesses about the case for moving into the city. The millage rate is infinitesimal. I mean, it's 0.364. The ISO rating, I think that's something that has to be looked at. Vice Mayor Penny and I spoke this week about the wind insurance issue that the city of Holly Hill opted out of years ago, and evidently, without a legislative decision from Tallahassee, maybe that the city can't get back in that program, and that could be a further disincentive to businesses wanting to move from the county to the city.
Does the county offer it? The wind?
The county does.
Oh,
I think you could opt in or opt out, and Holly Hill opted out.
right.
Others opted out, and then I think back in a time period that they were allowed to do that.
But you're saying that the county is opted in? So people that are in the county in a business can get wind insurance if they were to annex in, they wouldn't be able to get it, is what you're saying?
I could not definitively say that. But I will find that answer out.
I don't know if the wind pool is a definitive line, or if it's a boundary like city limits.
Do you know, John?
In our area, it's limits, and I don't know.
Strictly-
I don't know unincorporated Volusia County is in the wind pool or not. I don't know. Down south, it's 95, but here it's city limits.
To answer the mayor's question, John and I spoke last week as I'm trying to get in more direction to go after some of the annexed commercial properties on Nova Road, and I pulled up the total millage rates for unincorporated area and the city, and they're off by that amount. And it's not that we've had people that said, I'm not coming into your city because your millage is higher. It was a conversation that we said, if we were closer in millage, we can use that as a reason to come in, but
correct.
nobody's opposed us for that reason. So it's just a tool to say, well,
I mean,
your
it's-
taxes are going to be about the same.
It's kind of a moot point to go after them if you got something like wind insurance that they can get through one and they can't get through the other. I mean, what's the difference?
Yeah, I
It isn't
think,
going to attract anybody. if
I
they-
think the less objections we can take away, the better, though.
Well, that's-
Because we
that's-
still have people coming and annexing in or wanting to, but the ones that are not, they have objections. And so if we could take away as many objections as we can, and I know John is the vice mayor's on the whole wind pool issue and talk to state rep, and that's something that this city, we're going to have to take a look at. I probably won't be here, of course, but it's going to have to be something that's addressed.
It seems like a game changer, more than the, like you say, infantile amount of tax.
Yeah, but a lot harder, and it can't happen here in the next couple meetings.
No, I know. But I'm just saying, it's kind of like, why would you want to jeopardize the increase to offset the increase of the cost if it's going to be something that's probably not going to entice them anyway because of that typical circumstance. I don't know how much, I mean, he's more in the insurance business than I am, but it seems like that would be more of a game changer than a couple bucks on the insurance, on the millage.
I mean, it could be, but the point is that we can't control everything, Commissioner.
No, I
But
understand.
what we can control
Yeah.
is our millage rate. And so, you know me, I've been a tax hawk since I've been up here, and I just want to find ways to keep decreasing. And if we haven't done that, then we'd still be at 6.89. And so, each year that the budget comes forward, we set our maximum, and tonight we'll set our maximum. And in the last couple of years, staff has come back after that and been able to find substantial ways to cut the budget, the operating budget. And I just think that can be done again, and I think that we can ask of that. Now, if they can't come up with a good way to do that without cutting essential services, then that's something we have to look at. But I think it can be done. From my conversation with Mr. Forte, it was very positive, and so that's why I threw this idea out there. I think that whatever we can do, we should do, right? So we could sit on our hands and just say, well, it's not that much of a difference, but the county will be going down again this year. I mean, they're not staying at current rate. I talked to Commissioner Danny Robbins today, and he says that they won't be at full rollback, he doesn't think, but they are going to be decreasing the millage. So I just think that if we have the opportunity to move it down, we should, and I know that Mr. Forte can balance the budget on that.
My main concern is we probably got, what do you figure, maximum of a half a dozen potentials that we could bring in is about Is that about all that's left out there that's around us that we can?
How many would you say, Mr. Forte? How many businesses you think?
It's somewhere between 6 and 12, I would think.
And so, but from my point of view and what I've talked to the engineers and things about, I think the biggest selling point is so much easier if you want to make changes on your property, if you annex into Holly Hill than if you have to deal with the county. You know,
That is one of the reasons people annex in, is they don't want to have to deal with the county on certain issues.
And like on mine, my property on Nova Road used to be in the county. I know it was, taxes was cheaper and things like that, but you couldn't, you had to go to the land and back and forth and try to fight to get anything done. And when I first built it, that was the very first year that you had to retain all your water on your property. And you talking about a mess, back and forth to the land. But the first time, nobody knew anything about to do it or something. It's so much easier, and I've heard so many other people say the same thing, especially the engineers that I work with them, that it's so much easier to deal with Holly Hill if you want to make changes than it is the county. And to me, that's the biggest selling point, you know. To me, I mean, that's what I would look at it.
I agree with you, but some of these businesses too have been in business for a long time and they just continue to stay that way. So if you're a car place
They don't want to
or,
make any changes.
right, so they don't want to make any changes, yeah. So, and some of the other items, and I don't know if you want to talk about it now, Mr. Forte, but it looks like we have some time with some of the annexations coming in, some of the things that we're looking at. I know that I think it was New Smyrna Beach waived all of their fees. Do you know about that? Have you talked to Mr. Cox about that?
Yeah, we've talked about that at the staff level too, that, you know, what I would prefer to do is start, we'll call it kind of like a marketing campaign to open up a window for people to annex in. You know, you set the stage, you provide them an opportunity to annex in, you give them something that will entice them, and then to close the deal, you say, well, we'll do it at no cost to you. So the city would absorb whatever the cost of annexation is. That's the advertising, the land use change, the comp plan change, all of that stuff. And you do it to entice them to come in. Now, that just pushes out the time frame that you'll break even because you'll pay that money, but then you'll have them in the city forever and ever. So once we put together a plan to go out and try to address these, you know, and I would want to try to do them all at the same time. I want to just open up a window to try and get them in at once instead of kind of, I don't want to say cherry picking, but you're hitting them a little bit at a time. So to answer your question, yes, we can do that.
Okay.
I think JP wanted to say.
Vice Mayor?
It's my experience that the only people that want to annex into the city want to change the zoning to a City of Holly Hill zoning rather than the zoning they currently have in the county, and it's much easier to deal with us. So that's why we've done it. I think the amount of people and the businesses that we have, unless they change hands, you're not going to be able to incentivize them to come into the city. Even if our millage rate is close, it would have to be much cheaper for me as a business owner to make that decision. So I don't think we can count on what if annexation money. We look at the budget, and I think we as elected officials look at the budget the wrong way. We play with the millage rate. The millage rate is set by the amount of money that the city needs to operate. And we're looking at a $1.3 million increase in proposed expenses. And I'd like to add some more things to it. So I don't, if we want to talk about lowering the millage rate, I think we need to talk about what projects we need to cut, what expenses we need to shave off, and then give that back to staff. Okay, we'd like to eliminate $100,000 from this part of the city. Tell us how to do it, staff, rather than just saying, staff, here's the arbitrary millage rate. You get there. Mr. Forte could get the millage rate to 1 if you wanted it to be 1. Drain the reserves to do it, and we'll be out of business in 6 months, but he could do it. So I don't think that we as elected officials give staff the support that they need to give them with projects. Like I would like to add $150,000 to this budget. I'd like to add $100,000 to sidewalk paving. We have $50,000 in the budget. I walk Riverside Drive twice a week. It's broken. It's one of our most popular sidewalks in the entire community. Scooters ride that Bikes ride it, people walk it, people on rollerblades. It's dangerous in some areas. And just by my rough calculations, it's $100 a linear foot to replace that sidewalk. If we have 1,000 feet that need to be fixed, that's $100,000. Boom. I'd also like to add an additional $45,000 to our parks. We're spending a lot of money on our parks. Last year, we had a meeting, and we decided to add additional money to the park maintenance, mainly the Second Street Park. I don't know if we spent it. I don't know if we did or if we didn't. I don't know what extra things were done there or weren't done there. But if we're going to have these parks, we need to have them pristine. And I'd like to add $5,000 for an Employee Appreciation Day. I'll be the mayor in November, and my campaign was 4/17. I'd like Employee Appreciation Day to be April 17th every year. We're going to have a picnic somewhere, and it's going to cost $50 an employee, so I need $5,000 to do that. So those three projects alone are about $150,000. So I would like to add that, rather than lowering the millage rate. We can, and most of these things, if you want to, doesn't affect the millage rate. We got $7 million in reserve. We don't really need that much. We could pull it out of reserves if we need to balance the budget that way. With capital, I'm fine with balancing the budget on capital with reserves, but never operational with the reserves. So that's just kind of how I feel. I think if we want to chop things off the millage rate, we need to give staff direction. What do we want to chop? I think it'd be much easier for staff than them to just arbitrarily chop something. And if you go through this 71-page budget, there's a lot of stuff in here. and Michelle and the finance department and Mr. Forte are much more familiar with it than I'm sure any of us. You could ask, okay, what's line, 2795? I don't know what that is, but they can tell you exactly what category that is. So that's just my thoughts. So I appreciate that we want to talk about lowering the millage rate. I want to lower it, but I want to make sure that we don't lower it to a point where years ago, this commission, before any of us sat here, historically went to rollbacks every time. And I think we sold ourselves short and sold our citizens short by not giving them the level of service that they wanted. And I applaud this commission for all the money that we spent in the parks, that the improvements that are coming to Sunrise Park. I think that's a legacy for Mr. Mayor, is that the improvements that are going to happen at that park, the improvements that are going to happen next year at 7th Street Park. So we have the parks, let's keep them up. So that's my soapbox.
Are you proposing to go above 5.9 with those additions?
No. The only thing that would be recurring out of what I asked for is $5,000 for an Employee Appreciation Day. So it's not going to affect the millage rate. But I would just like those projects to be in there. I don't know if we have the staff to pull them off. We got so many capital projects, but maybe we get an outside vendor to help us with some of these things. And maybe it doesn't cost that much. I'm just spitballing as when I walk, those sections are what, 10-foot sections? 8 foot wide, but how? It's 8 by 5? It's a 40-foot section?
It's 5 wide, 5 length.
Okay,
And
8.
And 6
Okay,
wide.
okay. So there's just a bunch of broken stuff, and it'd just be a shame to have someone trip and fall on it. So we have a lot of, what we do, I think, as government is we build things and we don't plan to maintain them. And I think that's what this commission has done. I applaud this commission over the past few years to set up maintenance for replacement for our vehicles and Antoine helping us to replace pumps and things that we never used to fix until they got broke. And then when they broke, they cost 10 times as much as to replace them before they're broken. So I'll shut up.
No, that's fine. I appreciate your opinion. I just think we have a difference of opinion in how budgets are created. And I think that, because you said arbitrary, I'm not being arbitrary in saying where I want to see the budget and where I want to see our millage rate, because that's the only thing we can't control. We can't control the valuations, but the fact is that we are raising taxes if it's over rollback. And so that's just where I'm at philosophically, and that's why I come at this every year. We have the same conversation every single year. And so, at some point, the staff had to sit down and say, we're basing this budget at 5.9, and they balanced the budget at 5.9. Why? Because it was our current rate. And so if you're saying what I'm saying is arbitrary, I would argue that that would be arbitrary because we're just choosing that because it's current. why not go ahead and actually see what the needs are? And then it's actually 5.89732, which has happened in the past. So the only thing that I'm asking is that our staff can sharpen the pencils, go back, take a look at things, and see where they could propose savings for us. And that's the only thing I'm saying. And I'm not attacking our staff by any means. I think this commission has done a great job with our maintenance, as you talked about. A lot of governments build and they plan to succeed long-term with those. And some of our city has seen that over the last many decades. Specifically, you brought up a lot of sidewalks, and we weren't doing sidewalk maintenance for years, but for the last couple of years, I've been asking for sidewalk maintenance to be discussed, and it's still, we still haven't fully had it discussed, but we're looking at it, we're fixing what we can. So I get it, and there's a lot of needs, but when I look at it, I just look at, I want to try to bring down that rate as much as possible. If I had my magic wand, it would be back to rollback. I know that that's not possible this year with everything going, all the expenses going through the roof, and we are taking on new projects, like you said. We have to maintain all of that. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a difference of opinion on that. So, but we have about 10 minutes left of our meeting, so if any of the other commissioners want to opine on the millage rate, we are going to be voting on the maximum tonight. Doesn't mean that it has to be there, but it can't go above that for anyone watching or listening.
Looking at it from a business point of view, and I've already been through it, I don't think that close on a millage rate that a business would look at, that would be their decision. Mostly what business look at is, what can I do with my property in Holly Hill compared to what I could do within any county? And they look at, what is the property value here compared to the property value there? I mean, look, Ormond's millage rate is a lot lower too, but the property values are more. So you still pay as much, and I mean, and I probably pay as much taxes as anybody in Holly Hill just about, I mean, but so I just don't think that much. And you said yourself, I think, did you say one of the commissioners said they was thinking about lowering their rate again? So if we lower down to what they are now, close to what they are, and they lower theirs again, we still got the spread. And now right. I think they look at it more about what they can do with their property in Holly Hill compared to what they can do in the county, unless it's way out of range.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but also if we don't lower it and they lower it, then that gap is wider and becomes a bigger objection as well. Yes, sir.
You said it best when you say we kind of do this every year.
Yeah.
And we sort of, I think our kind of our MO is to throw that 5.9 out there, because we know we're not going to go above it as a maximum,
And worked out.
and then marinate and see how we go. So
Yeah,
that's kind of where we've been doing it, and I think we should just
in
do
the
that
last few
tonight.
years, the staff has came back with those findings for us after the fact. And so for people listening, once again, one of the first items on our commission agenda tonight will be setting that maximum millage rate, which by law we have to state what that is publicly, and then we'll have 2 meetings after that to actually set the actual millage rate. So whatever it is, it can go down. The tax rate can go down from that, but it can't go up. So you're exactly right, Commissioner. So we have a few more minutes, and we have a commission meeting coming up right afterwards. Is there anything else you want to talk about in this workshop, Mr. Forte?
Yeah, so just for my own clarity, I don't see consensus to go forward and lower the millage, but if I can find some savings, obviously if I can find some savings to lower the millage, no one's going to get mad at me for doing that, right?
Right, I don't think
No, and I
so.
think a lot of it's going to be our meeting after the next meeting. How are we in negotiations? We don't know what
Right.
salaries are going to be, and salaries affect benefits and retirement, and so we don't have all the answers yet.
Yeah, so the shade meeting is going to play a role in that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
All right, anything further?
No.
Anything further from the commission? All right. With that, we have nothing further. We will start our commission meeting at 6 o'clock, and this workshop is now adjourned.
Approximately 6.